So the
I'll let you know when people come in.
Yeah, the ever-changing Instagram is that now you can't share the story. You share it to your Instagram TV. It's hard to keep track of all this shit. Just when you get solid, then they change it. Have people following back in?
Yes, 15 people so far.
I'll wait for a couple minutes. I'll just start turning. There's not much going on. People have questions, just ask. Yeah, okay, so that's a good spot, because I'm gonna start going in deep. It'll be hard to see.
Head's in the way.
Oh,
It's okay.
can you still see?
Yep.
I'm putting a little dimple on the bottom so that I can drill a hole. You see in there? People
Yeah.
can see? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There was a question about, can you say a little about what the advantage or benefits are to end grain turned cups?
Side grain turned cups won't really work if you want a deep cup. I mean, you can probably do it, but if you get a really big tree and you make a cup out of it, your rings are going to be like this, and it's just going to break off. That's one bad thing. The second is turning tangential wood, which has a tight diameter and tall. You'd have a hard time getting a smooth surface. Where end grain, it's like sharpening a pencil. You know, whether you're on the outside or the inside, you're making these incredible shear cuts by just putting a tool against the grain. The fibers are running this way. And the third is when the green wood dries and then swells again in use, depending on your finish. Tangential tends to warp a lot and move because there's different sections of the tree that swell more than others because of the grain orientation. So you have end grain on two sides and side grain on the adjacent sides, and the end grain swell more and the side grain doesn't after it's dry and in use. When it's drying, it dries the opposite. That's why those bowls have the shape to it. But in use, cups will crack because they swell and they crack. And there's very few, a lot of the kuksa carvers already know this, that you end up getting a fair amount of cracks at the rim unless you oversize it, make it over thick, really have high polymerized oil, you're careful in what you put in it. You know, those are the kinds of things. Obviously not everyone cracks, but but it's an issue. When I was turning these Sneebstall, when I started with these years ago, side grain, they want to open up and they end up splitting. So I actually oriented them so that the outside of the tree was at the base. The rim, the heart of the tree was at the base, so that when it swells, it actually compresses at the rim. That's one way of doing it, but again, end grain is really good for cups and bowls if you can seal the end grain and keep it from swelling. So if you're using urushi or a really good polymerizing oil, you don't have any problems with shrinkage and contraction, even with end grain. All right. So the last trip to Japan in Takayama, Kawakami-san and his apprentice Arena, they're turning cups, and I learned a lot from both of those turners, and the hollowing of the cups, like he said, everybody has to find their own way when it comes to tools. So I learned a lot from him and his tools, but I'd already kind of developed a concept from pole lathe turning end grain, which is that hollowing hook. It's tipped back. I'll get it. That'll be the next. Pole lathe video will do is end grain, but so with the pole lathe, this is a pretty old and worn out one, but you bring this in and then you pull it out to do your smoothing cuts. Because of the fiber orientation, you want to make smoothing cuts from the base to the rim, not from the rim to the base. So this is inspired by a French-Canadian turner named Andre Martel. And he makes a pretty cool hook for end grain for electric lathes. And I have one, and his is patented. And before you get all wild about that, his specific tool has some legitimate originality compared to just a random hook. And he likens it to, and the reason I'm talking about this is I find it interesting when we talk about original design and copyright and plagiarism and all that stuff, which is, it varies from interesting to not interesting for me. But he's like, I didn't invent the bicycle, I invented a certain kind of steering wheel, is how he puts it, which is interesting. And the reason I mentioned it is mine is not a copy of his. For one, it's illegal, like really illegal. And second is I'm not incorporating his design into my hook. Because the pole lathe travels at such slow speed, we end up having to tip this down quite a bit compared to his hook. And I think Sharif Adam calls it the politician hook. I don't necessarily like the name, but it comes from Martel's hook. So with that said, I developed an idea on this end grain turning with this Japanese lathe. You want to skew, the blade needs to skew as it comes out. And so I'm going to be using this part of the hook here as I pull out, and it gets that same skew because the blade is on an angle, or the edge is on an angle. So very similar to that hook, it's just set up differently. And there's a strong bevel on the outside, so I can control it with the higher speeds, 6, 7, 800 RPMs or more. On the pole lathe, you're gonna get maybe 200 max, and so some of those angles aren't as critical. And that bevel thing isn't as critical. Oops, needs to be sharpened. Make some noise. So all these hooks are, I forged from high-speed steel. Which I learned how to do in Japan. That's why the grinder is needed. It's a little bit slow without it. So this technique I'm using where I'm pulling along a tool rest, it took me almost a year to really get it. It's a balance of pressure, pivot, cut on the, you're cutting on a pivot, so we're pivoting in, we're pushing the tool in, and then not so much that we can slide the tool along the tool rest and still maintain a good cut. And then I'm engaging the depth by how I turn the hook or where on the radius I'm cutting. I can cut down here and turn in, or I can cut up high and then turn in or out to control the type of cut I'm making. And I'm also using the kind of the mushy flesh part of my hand. I use this on the pole lathe too. When you're pulling, it's a little bit of a shock absorber there. You're squeezing down a little bit, you can pull against your flesh, and it acts as a little bit of a friction. And my teacher actually put cigarette ash on his tool rest to act as a little bit of friction, so that he was able to slide in and out during certain cuts. He had a little ashtray and he would always put some on there. And that's what that's for, it's a little bit of friction. Otherwise this gets really smooth and burnished. Those little things you have to pay attention and watch, like why is he doing that? And then you gain experience and then you realize. the bottom there, a little bit of a ledge.
It's really hard to.
Yeah, you won't be able
Get
to
this.
see it, but there's a little lump down there. It's hard to see, and then there's a couple more tools I'm going to use, so stick around. I felt something funny. There's a little bit of bark there. Something was chattering.
Daniel said, "Polades are for dorks. This is the future."
You said it, not me, Daniel. Yeah, there's a little bit of bark there that's tossing my tool around. I felt it right away and I was like, oh, I don't see any sign of it on the outside. I'm going to do the bottom now. Crank up the speed. That kind of a hard area to cut because of that bark. It's causing the tool to act a little funny, but I pretty much got it. Yeah, it's pretty even. I was making really thin cups when I first got back from Japan. And then, because they make really thin cups there. And then I started making thicker cups, and now I'm trying to go back to find a middle ground. As far as it's gonna go.
It's pretty thin.
Yeah. Now this tool is another one of those scrapers, but it's set up on this angle where I can get a skew cut on it. Checking for the burr. I'll try it out and see. Now I'm gonna go forward. So I've been switching back and forth, if you hadn't noticed. With that other tool, I'm working in reverse. Now I'm gonna go forward. This one's cool because I can get the bottom. I'll come up to the center and then give it a little twist, and then I'll take it all the way down to the intersection of bottom and side, and then I'll pull out. And one of the things that I'll mention for those that haven't turned much, it's not so much what's happening here that you need to worry about. Get an idea of how this is shaped, and then watch my hand here. This is where you're going to learn what's going on and the subtle moves that I make in all the turning videos. And if you can't see the cutting edge, just watch the twist of the hand.
I'm afraid that wasn't in the frame.
No.
I'm not sure.
You can see again, small, it's cutting very small amounts. Little shavings. This was a little bit dull. I haven't used it in a while, so. And the dry wood and green wood are different, so it's gonna be. This one is of my own design. And it's quite complex for shape. If it's not right here, it won't cut the bottom. And then, you know, here it cuts the side of the cup, no problem down in here. But I want that angle to cut the bottom too, without having to bring in another tool. And so it's really tricky tool. Yeah, that figure is really, it's really nice, but it's causing some issues in there. Yeah, that's better. There's still a little bulge there, but I won't be able to get it. And then the last is this, another one of those handheld scrapers. The angles on these handheld ones and the other scrapers as well are really critical to the type of wood and its moisture content. And I'm still just keeping notes and trying to figure out what's what. So, and I don't try to, I'm not a very scientific person, so I kind of just keep going and it's like, oh, that works good. And I don't actually record the angle, and then I try to find it again later. I think it's going to help me to understand what's going on. It's just going to take longer, and that's okay. So don't ask me what angle my tools are at, because I won't be able to tell you. This one you'll see the nice, like light, fluffy shavings coming out of there. Maybe you want to get on the side. Maybe not. Again, those are like really fine shavings. Nice. And then I have this experimental scraper for the bottom that I haven't put a handle on yet because I'm still modifying it. But again, it has a burr. And it's cutting little shavings. It actually works better on dry wood than green. I've been using it on my greenwood stuff, and yeah, I need to do a little bit more. That's better. Yeah, there's some really, that serious figure in there. You can kind of see it rippling. And then there's the bark. That's like a total surprise. There's nothing there. So.
What sort of thickness are you aiming for in the bottom of the cup?
That much? Less than 3/8, like a 1/4 inch to 5/16. 3/8 if you were gonna do maybe a non-urushi finish. Too thin and it'll absorb too much liquid. I'm just deciding which jam chuck to use. I think I'll use this one. Now this is where you have to be careful not to put it on too tight, otherwise you'll break it. It's easy to catch on this little tendon too, so I'm going to go quite cautious. What I mean by catch is because the part that's spinning is so small, the sweet spot for cutting with this particular hook and its edge geometry and angle is like 8 o'clock. But because this is so small, it gets tossed under quite quickly and then catches, and then it'll kink or break. Or crack if it gets caught. tossed. I'm trying to actually sever it off. There we go. Speed it up a little bit. Got a nice little concave. Usually I put a little foot in, but I'm not gonna do it this time. That's nice. Okay, so there. Yeah, when this gets sashimi lacquered, this will look really sweet. It's a little thick down here, but it's okay. That knot really threw me off. So there it goes. That's the end grain turning. The last time I recorded it, we did a bowl. So maybe we'll do that again someday, but in the COVID sessions on Sunday.
So next week is pole lathe turning?
Next week we're gonna do end grain cup turning on pole lathe,
Okay.
maybe with handle. So you can tune in then. If there's any questions, now's the time. And then look at Instagram TV, I guess. That's where these end up now and not on the story for some reason.
Somebody asked if you're going to cut it in half now.
I should. I actually thought about it when I felt that lump down there. I want to see what's going on, but I don't think Jasmine's going to appreciate it.
So visit our website.
Yeah, check out the website. Thanks for folks who bought stuff whenever that last sale was, last Saturday last Saturday. There might be a couple things left. Mostly writing. I'm turning a little bit more. I'm turning some plates and stuff this week.
Plates are coming up.
I got some good cherry from a buddy of mine. Boat Shop Tricks over in Washburn, if you're listening. I appreciate it, but yeah, I don't know. Hope you all are doing well and having fun. And yeah, we'll see ya.
Bye.